This is Janet Beer, Vice-Chancellor of the University of Liverpool, and you're listening to the Academy's Developing Practice podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Academy's Developing Practice podcast. In this episode, we chat with Janet about leading the University of Liverpool with trust and shared responsibility. We hope you enjoy. Well, Janet, we're really pleased to be speaking to you today. Thank you so much for your time. It's great to have this chance to speak to you before you retire from your role as Vice-Chancellor at the University of Liverpool at the end of the year. So we wondered if we could start by asking you what you've most enjoyed about leading this institution.
Well, I have been thinking about this, as you can imagine, and there are so many things. So I think I'm going to kind of have a little bit of a cop-out here, which is to say the variety, which is the thing is with Liverpool University of Liverpool, as we always call it, is that its role in the city is incredibly significant. Its role as part of the cultural and economic landscape in the city and the city region is very important. Its role in the north is important. Its role in the nation is important, and its role internationally is important. And that's even before you get to kind of the nuts and bolts of the day job. And so in my previous institution, where I was definitely the second university in Oxford, the city is so absolutely identified with the University of Oxford, all the medieval buildings in the centre, etc. Even though when I went there, everyone was very clear with me in the city and in the county that Oxford Brookes was the university for the city, because the University of Oxford could have been on the planet Mars. Sure. For all the kind of, we educated the nurses, the physios, the architects, all the professions that went into the kind of infrastructure of Oxfordshire, but the identification of the city with the University of Oxford is so powerful. And I very much enjoyed being the civic anchor institution leader in Liverpool and having the full range of possibility in terms of collaboration and working with my colleagues across, all sectors in the city as well as internationally. We had a big international presence at Brookes, but not to the same extent as Liverpool. So the huge variety, also, the daily joy of finding out from colleagues what excites them, their research, what they're doing, what their ambitions are. So the amazing variety. Fantastic.
And I guess within that huge portfolio, you've had to adopt a certain leadership style. Can you tell us a bit about that? And was that different to the leadership style that you adopted at Oxford Brookes, maybe?
Yeah. No, not particularly, because I think in a sense your leadership model is your model. It's probably, you get to a particular stage in your career when you have found what works for you. I don't think you could do this job here or anywhere else, including Oxford Brookes, unless you trusted your colleagues to get on with things. So my leadership model is about, hiring people who are smarter than you and trusting them to get on with their jobs, but also making it very clear to them that the responsibility is shared. And so if on the odd occasion when something doesn't go to plan, there's no blame culture. It is, we all agreed this was the best approach. We're going to have to rethink what can we learn, and we'll do something different the next time.
Fantastic.
I'm sure that obviously there must have been some challenges during your time as leader of the university, and obviously one of those key challenges would have been your response to the university's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sorry to drag this up again. I know it's one of those things we're probably going to be talking about this for decades.
Yeah. And so we should.
Yeah.
So we should, in terms of lessons learned, because it did put us all, in a very, very strange place. But I think we adapted really quickly, and certainly the team, as I've just referred to, has never been more important. Never been more important. The idea that group of people, the minute we got used to being in a Zoom room as opposed to being in a room, it helped because we were an existing team. we all knew each other really well. We all knew that person would backfill there and that person would jump in there, and together we were a kind of ecosystem. But I remember when we were trying to work out how much and when and how to talk to the council about it, we were going to refund students in our halls of residence who wanted to go home. Not all universities did it. We were meeting and then going away to think, meeting again, and then somebody would, put in the group, we need to come together now. We need to think about this. And, we just gnawed away at it until we got to the place where we were all, content with where we'd got. But that was, so it's about making a decision that's going to cost the university £6 million, but is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So how do you get there? What do you need in order to be able to arrive at that place? How do you all work together to do it? So that's just a straightforward-ish example of the kind of problems. But, it was waking up every day with an apparently intractable set of problems for which solutions had to be found. And by just, bringing the right group of people together. So we had the emergency, our version of COBRA, bringing those people together in order to say, we've got to make a decision about this. Public health want us to do that. We're required on this level to do this. What does it mean for them? Etc. How do we support our medical students? What do we do about this? Every day a new set of challenges that were brand new to everybody, but that we could just, in a sense, descend on and worry our way at until we had a solution. So it was hard, but it was rewarding also.
Yeah, I think there was a few things at that time that you were incredibly proud to work for the university at that point. There was a few things we were doing where you just thought, we're making a difference there. Yeah. Even the little things like opening the car parks to the NHS staff.
Using our accommodation for those who couldn't go home as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It seems so simple, but actually it would have made a big difference.
But we had, we had a very positive pandemic in terms of our reputation. I think our academics were on the red sofa, contributing to SAGE. That was hugely helpful to me. I could pick up the phone to Callum Semple and say, if we decide to do this, what are the implications for that? And can you tell me what's coming down the track there? So having that access to that level of intelligence was amazing. Mm-hmm. And because the first thing you need to be aware of when you're making a decision that's out of the ordinary is what might be the unintended consequences. Having somebody like Callum to bounce it off was hugely helpful. So the eminence of our scientists and all the work that Ian Buchan did around data, and how Louise Kenny, brought all the actors in the health system across Liverpool. And, we have a very fragmented NHS here, brought them all together to focus their minds on how we need to use the research in order to manage the pandemic for the people of the city region. It was concerted working together like I've experienced never before, and probably won't again. It's a kind of sad thing, but emergencies make people, step up in a different way. Yeah. And change their mindset. Yeah.
In the end of 2020, we had Tony Oakman, the chief exec of Bolton Council, on the podcast. And at that point, Bolton were in the eye of a storm there in particular. There was things happening in Bolton, and the national press were interested in that area. And we were talking to him about his leadership style at that time. And he said his style hadn't changed, but the processes around his leadership had changed. So he had much more to do with the comms team, because by the time they'd written comms and they'd gone through the normal processes, the comms are out of date. Yeah. Were you finding similar things here? Did you change your
because mine is very inclusive anyway. So right. Sabina Frediani and Tim Siemens are both members of Viper, which is our version of COBRA, which is the Vice-Chancellor's emergency group. The head of comms is one of my closest colleagues. So comms and me are inseparable. Right. Yeah. So no, I didn't have to. It's not something over there that I never take any notice of. I take advice from from the Director of Comms because she's the expert. You know, I don't have to be the Director of HR, the head of legal, the head of comms.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have the most expert people around you and then make those decisions yourself. You take advice, you listen, and then on balance, you arrive at the place. So comms are always really important. I mean, I started in the early days of the pandemic, the weekly emails that now I kind of just decided in, I think, last academic year that I would keep them going, you know, because that's it now, isn't it? There's a Friday email and there's a poem. So,
yes, that's it. That is it. Yeah, and it signals the weekend.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in terms of what you've just shared with us in terms of your leadership style, I know many of our female colleagues who aspire to leadership roles, it's been inspiring having you as our Vice-Chancellor through the pandemic and also through your time here at Liverpool. And also to see other institutions led by women as well. For example, Louise Richardson at the University of Oxford, Alice Gast at Imperial and Nancy Rothwell at the University of Manchester. And in March 2022, it was reported that 21% of the top 200 universities now have a female leader, more than ever before. So I was wondering if we could ask you if you think there's something different that women bring to the Vice-Chancellor role.
On a simple level, yes. I mean, a couple of observations on those numbers to begin with. So a lot of my generation of women leaders, Louise, for instance, retires at the same time. Now she's being replaced by a woman, Irene Tracy, is the new VC of Oxford. Alice replaced by a man, me replaced by a man. And Nancy's still in post, obviously. Mary Stewart at Lincoln, replaced by a man. Pam Gillis at Glasgow Cali, replaced by a man. Liz Barnes at Staffordshire, replaced by a man. So women have been appointed elsewhere. Lisa at Exeter and Simone at Leeds, both replacing men. But until we get more women replacing women, I won't relax because, you know, I'm not suggesting that the Council of the University of Liverpool thought we've done that. We don't need to do that again. But, you know, we're still in a minority.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how the numbers are going to shake down now. Julie Lydon at South Wales, replaced by a man. You know, all my generation of women leaders, you know, being replaced by men. And it's about the best person for the job, obviously, but we just need to make sure that the pipeline is secure and that women aren't put off leadership. I mean, there's a certain amount of toxicity, you know, in the role of Vice-Chancellors. You are the whipping boy for very many things in the sector. And so I'm never surprised when people say, do you know what, I don't want it. But we do, the job is not done. And going back to how you started in terms of inspiration, I do think that one of the reasons why we are, you know, we're not doing well on BME in terms of our senior leadership in the university, and we're paying attention to that through the work that Fiona Beveridge is leading. But in terms of gender, there are more women than men in the senior team. I think like 45% of the next level down are women. And, you know, the problem has always been in universities that women are overrepresented at the lower grades. And they still are in terms of our gender pay gap, but that's almost inevitable because we employ everybody. Our cleaners are predominantly women, you know, our catering staff, etc. So, you know, we employ everyone, but I think women are attracted to institutions where there's good representation of women.
And is there anything else you can think of that we could do to encourage women into that role? So obviously, as you're saying, seeing representation, but is there anything else?
Well, it's support along the way. I mean, one of the things that is very important is making sure that people have mentorship, and it doesn't have to be a woman mentoring a woman. It can be someone sharing their experience of leadership. And I always say to aspiring women leaders, you know, don't think that it's going to be harder than the job you've got at the minute, because what it gives you is more choice, more power, more knowledge. And actually knowledge, you know, is very helpful to you in making decisions about how you organise your life. And so, you know, this job may seem incredibly pressured, but there are different kinds of pressures with leadership, and some of them are very, very fulfilling and enjoyable.
I'm just reflecting on that, thinking I came from a position where I was leading a training and development team in a local government, and I found the pressure unbearable. So when I came to Liverpool, the role was to look after obligatory framework, to work with technicians, and to be more of a practitioner. And I found that, well, it's been an amazing time actually, because the pressure of just seeing a team through against the backdrop of lots and lots of cuts in the public sector was horrific, to be honest with you. So this was a completely different experience for me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you only learn these things by comparison, right? So I once did this leadership program at the Windsor Leadership Trust, and I was in a group with, a bishop, somebody who ran the guy who ran Welsh Water, but the other guy ran the MOD ordnance operation, and he was having to halve his workforce. And we were just talking about the things that he had to do, and I'm thinking, oh my God, such an easy life. It's just like, my problems are, I could identify totally with what was going on for him and, be helpful to him in a conversation. But I think sometimes, it's a big yellow taxi, isn't it? You don't know what you've got till it's gone, and vice versa. It's, you need to maintain a sense of balance. And sometimes when people have only worked in one place, including a university, their perspective is a bit off, because all they've got to compare it to is 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Rather than what life might be like in another industry or another university or a whole range of things. It used to be like this. I mean, when I first started teaching, if you can believe it, I was in a college inside a bigger confederated university. Afternoon tea used to be served for staff.
Wow.
So, you'd start your class at 2, you'd break at 3:30 for half an hour, go back at 4 for another hour. And because all the sessions were arranged in 3-hour blocks with a half-hour break, and you get downstairs and there'd be scones or,
Lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Just like, and then it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, where's my tea gone? Where's my tea gone? But that was a very, very different age, and a very different set of kind of the college worked on the college. I'm sure at, Oxford colleges, there's still afternoon tea, but, it's, maybe not. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and, when higher education was a smaller, more kind of gentleman's club, there were senior common rooms and, wine cellars and,
Yeah. Yeah, completely different time. Well, you're right. It is different when you're comparing to the past rather than to different sectors, and that's why I think it's actually really important for people for new members of staff in universities to maybe come from different backgrounds sometimes, because they do bring different perspectives. I've seen that in the academy quite often. Yeah.
No, I think it is really, really useful to have people who have different kinds of institutional background, but also different kinds of industry background. So, Director of People and Services, Carol, her history was before the university, was in local government, and, head of legal, Kevin, used to be in private practice. I was in local government for 7 years. Many people who end up in senior leadership roles in universities have had periods where they've been doing other things, which is interesting. Louise Kenny, senior medic, before she went into running her own research outfit. So, people who have had different... Weber used to be a school teacher, I think, before he...
Oh, right.
Yeah, before he did his PhD. So, people who've done different things have points of comparison and a bigger picture.
Yeah.
I remember a few years ago I attended an event with Dame Lorna Muirhead, and at the time I think she was the Lord Lieutenant of Merseyside. And I remember asking her at the time if we'd reached a point where women can now achieve anything a man can achieve. And I remember her answer really struck me, because she said yes, but not all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I've come back to that statement time and time again throughout my career of yes, but not all at the same time. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on that statement in terms of, can women now achieve everything that a man can achieve?
Yeah. So, short answer, yes, unless you have to be 6'4", some women are 6'4", but not many, let's face it. So if it's down to physical strength, endurance, probably not. There are many jobs of a physical nature that women can do, but, they're always going to be stronger, faster.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go into a front row against, the All Blacks. Thank you very much. So there are things. There are things we have to be realistic about. Having said that, I know what Lorna means, because, men can't have babies, women can. And we have to get to a state where we have to say, right, necessarily I'm on pause here. And necessarily there are these adjustments. But, it's not all down to women once the woman-only job is done. And it's about finding a balance at home. Realistically, we know women take the burden. But again, what I say to the Aurora participants who are going off to do the Leadership Foundation leadership program that's just for women, just try to park it. Just try to park it for the duration of the course. Just try to think about you. I think it's not what we're bad at. What we can't do is ever think ourselves free of the contingencies. We can't think ourselves free of the people that rely on us, that we love, and we shouldn't.
No.
And it's fine to put family first. Of course, you must put family first. But it needn't be in conflict with your professional duties. Sometimes one will, take more of your oxygen than the other. But we have to be able to have it all. But sometimes you can only have one thing. I mean, I moved my kids 3 or 4 times, and then when they went to secondary school, I said, all right, I promise not to move you again till you're 18. Or not to move again till you're 18. And my daughter, who's my younger one, was going to Leeds in October, and I got the job at Brookes in September. And she says, I didn't waste much time, did you? But, my daughter went to 3 different primary schools, so they had moved around for me. So then I didn't move. But I was lucky I progressed within the same institution. I didn't need to move to progress. So that was good for me. But I also had a lot of support from my husband, but also from my father, because my mother died when my children were little. And so my dad, every other week he was mine. He did the shopping, he did the cooking, he did the gardening, took the kids to hockey, and every other week. So every other week, my evening engagements were then, because my husband worked in London and I was in Manchester, and then that week it was on me to get home, but I could predict it a year in advance.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I once had a delegation when I was the head of English. I had a delegation from the young women in the department, and I thought, oh God, what's this? 3 of them coming. We've got something to ask you. What? Can we have your dad?
Fantastic. No.
It's just like, no.
Keep your hands off.
He's mine. And, Grandad was really important to my kids.
Yeah. Great. And if I can ask, I guess in terms of what we were talking about role models and people
well organised. That's what I need to say in answer to Dame Lorna. You need to, there's nothing wrong with fish fingers and peas. It's a perfectly balanced meal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always know where your keys are.
Yeah.
And
making the packed lunches the night before. Yeah. That's my thing.
Or as soon as they can make their own.
Yeah. Too right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And do their own ironing.
Yeah.
The first complaint about a t-shirt bleed I got, I was like, yes. Your job now.
Yeah, over to you. Brilliant. Great. And I guess in terms of what we were talking about in terms of people who want to aspire to a certain role, seeing those role models, I guess your children as well have seen you being well organised and balancing all of your responsibilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And, a certain amount of mockery involved as well. They've always kept me grounded, Great. I do like to make cakes, and, on the weekend, if I was making a cake, and I had an apron on, my daughter would say, "At last, dressed like a proper mummy." But I'll tell you what they loved when they were teenagers. They loved that period between kind of getting home from school around 4:30, and then sixth form college, and me coming through the door 6:30, 7. They loved that time in the house. And I would ring them from like 5 minutes away and say, mommy alert, bags out of hall. Because they knew if I came through the door and tripped over bags and shoes, it put me in a bad mood for the rest of the evening. So,
Great. Yeah.
This sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you about your passion for equality and diversity. And obviously you've known for that throughout the sector, this institution in particular, the city region. What do you think, or not what do you think, but how do you think we can remove some of the barriers, not just for female leaders, as we've already discussed, but, people of colour as well? How do we remove those barriers?
Part of it is about, representation, and that's very hard at the minute because, for black students and staff, they're like, well, who do I see out there?
Yeah.
It's not as it should be, and that requires a lot of work, and we're prepared to put the work in. But there are a range of, in a sense, protected characteristics, and not all of them visible. But we need to pay more attention to the visible, and we are. It's work that, as I said to you about women leaders, it's not work that you can ever kind of sit back and think it's done. You have to get up and go at it again every day in terms of thinking through the consequences of decisions you take, in terms of the implications for EDI. And, the problems are nuanced. Things come towards you, and you have to respond, and then they almost become business as usual. And then something else comes towards you, you respond, it becomes business as usual. As you integrate that new need, that new necessity into your working practice. So this arises as an issue. Now we just do it, and then there'll be something else, and then something else. So, sustainability is a good example, isn't it? Even at the beginning of my tenure in 2015, it wasn't every other word on our lips.
No. Well, it wasn't in the strategy,
barely
was it?
Featured in Strategy 2026, and then all of a sudden it's the most pressing problem for our young people. And we really have to be serious about building it into the strategy, in a very significant way. And now it is. So comes at you. You go at it, business as usual. We can never, ever take our eye off that ball.
Part of the culture in our team in the academy, actually, it's part of the culture of the university, really, is that we learn from any mistakes that we make, and we make the most of them, because that's where the magic happens. You don't learn much from the successes that we have. Has there been at any time in the university, in your time as VC at the university, where you've made a mistake and thought, I've really learned from that?
Yeah. So I think, it's been... There have been small instances that are to do with, supporting people, where I think I could have put more in there. I could have helped that person succeed a bit quicker if I thought about that in advance. So things like that I have no problem at all saying to I didn't do that and I should have done. But in terms of biggest mistake, that was at Brookes, and it was a very, very big, lesson for me, and it was about the planning environment there, which is very different to Liverpool. It's a very, I had 3 campuses in 3 different planning authorities, because that was a district council responsibility, city council, so conservation zone, and then South Oxfordshire, and then maybe another one anyway.
Swindon?
So 3.
You've got places in Swindon?
No, Swindon's different. It's the nursing campus. But another Oxfordshire planning authority. So you're dealing with 3 different planning authorities. And Oxford has a lot of Greens on the council. And basically they hate any new buildings.
Right.
And certainly hate it if a tree's got to come down. And I didn't realise how difficult the planning environment was. I thought that building a new library for Brookes students and student centre would be welcomed, especially since it was replacing a lot of very, very ugly, hastily thrown up, prefabricated buildings and indeed porter cabins. And it was going to be an absolute glorious building. And it eventually was. It was shortlisted for the Sterling Prize. And the level of animosity and the whole kind of civic campaign against it, with the great and the good denouncing Brookes, as wicked. People saying to one of the local residents associations saying to me, we think this is Brookes getting above itself.
Wow.
Wanting a library.
Wanting a library.
Wanting a decent library for the students. And, I just don't think I understood the level of, resistance that there would be to any new development. And, you have to have all these tests. Would it be visible from a church tower in the middle of Oxford?
Right.
You have to let these red balloons go up, and if they're visible, and, But the first time it went to planning, it got thrown out, and it was unbelievable to me that would happen. And it was a lot of people who thought their view would be spoiled voting against it. And we then had to sink the building. It cost us extra millions, compromise the sustainability of the building. And then, even then, when we got planning permission, that was quite nail-biting. We were taken all the way to the highest court in the land by a local resident. I mean, the level of opposition and the kind of, the green ink letters and all that. I mean, absolutely astonishing. And it was a very, I'd gone from Manchester where development was the only god.
Yeah.
Assuming that the jobs and the beauty of the building and the enhancement of facilities for students were, I barely needed to make an argument about it, but, more for me. It was very, very, very shocking to me. Very shocking how they, they organised against a lovely new building, which eventually got built. But, and I'm, it's an amazing building and I'm very proud of it. But, it was one building on a campus. It's not like, we're seeing buildings go up all the time here in a very positive planning environment, one where we're developing brownfield sites, etc. So, yeah, I mean, it was a lesson about taking things for granted, carrying assumptions from one environment to another, not understanding the complexity and depth, and indeed, a lesson for me knowing that I'm not good at dealing with the irrational.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That somebody else has to be sent in to deal with the irrational.
Yeah.
Could you support our application for instance, a hall of residence? We're not supporting your plans for growth. No. There are students in houses of multiple occupation. We'd like to get them out of there and into residences. Will you support our application for We're not supporting your plans for growth.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the team comes in, right? So
absolutely, and so you send the person with the biggest Teflon coating in to deal with those people, and they smile.
Smile. Yeah,
exactly. Rather than do I have to stab you through the heart to get you to understand that we can't grow? You know. So. I did talk to council last week, the governing council, about the fact that, when I was appointed, it was a first. I mean, not only the first woman at Liverpool, but also the first time that someone who'd substantially spent their career in the post-92 sector was appointed to a Russell Group institution, and that it was a brave and bold decision to focus on what I'd achieved as a leader rather than where I had practiced that leadership. And I'm very grateful to council and to Liverpool for giving me the chance to lead this amazing university.
Janet, thank you for that conversation. It's been really interesting. This podcast is called the Developing Practice Podcast, and we like to finish each recording asking our guests for 2 or 3 take-home tips that our listeners can reflect on in terms of their own personal practice. So if there was something that you wanted to leave us with in terms of getting us to think about our practice, what would it be?
Okay, so, I mean, obviously I've already handed over the fish fingers and have a key bowl. So those are my top tips, obviously. So I think I've already mentioned no blame. The people don't operate well if there's a blame culture. And you really do have to give people space to make mistakes. It is as important to learn from things that haven't gone perfectly well. Like, Louise is always talking about we need to make more of failure in research because failure is much more common, but also it's learning. And I was with a young woman, and we were having an alumni event in Beijing, in fact, and her mum was a Liverpool graduate, and this young woman was a Paralympian. She'd won a gold medal swimming, and one of her arms finished at the elbow. And when she was born, her mum gave up her job. I think she was a teacher, and started her own physical therapy, trained as a physical therapist in order to help her daughter, but also started a physical therapy business and went on to do really well as a business. And the young woman said to me that her mum had always said to her, anything that's not a triumph is a lesson. And I think you do have to remember that, because failure is, as I said, it's a part and parcel of every day. And you have to just kind of take it on the chin, learn from it and move on. Also, if things do go wrong, my deputy at Brookes used to say, let's not add cover up to cock up, so fess up straight away. Fess up, get it all out there and share as much as possible. People value transparency. They don't quite, in universities, which can often be suspicious places, they don't necessarily know that everything is there and that you're not keeping a load of stuff. But transparency is a really good thing. So people can, if they want to, find out how things work, etc. And trust, that's the one I'd have to finish with. If you can trust people to have the same ambition as you to make the university a better place, then you can really feel that your leadership job is being done.
Wonderful.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
You're very welcome.
Well, that was a really interesting conversation with the Vice-Chancellor. Janet talked about her inclusive leadership style and how she prioritised a no-blame culture when she and her team were making decisions. She said that she trusts her team to make the decisions that are within their specialism. And she also spoke about how she employed this leadership style throughout her career and how this never really changed despite the various challenges that she faced.
Yeah, she did. She also spoke specifically about her work regarding equality, diversity and inclusion, and how important it is to think about the implications of the decisions that senior leaders make for issues related to EDI. She also talked about the process of how, as a senior leader, you have to respond to an issue. That response then becomes standard practice or business as usual, as she was saying, as you integrate that new priority, and then you must move on to the next priority, making that business as usual. It's always about understanding the nuances of the decisions that you make for issues related to EDI. And it's always about moving forward.
Well, there's lots within that podcast for us to think about and reflect on. If you'd like to take your thinking further, we've added some resources to the website on a specific podcast reading list, which you can access at liverpool.ac.uk/the-academy/podcast. Also, we'd love to hear what you thought about the episode, so please do tweet us at Live Uni Academy, and you can also find us at eLearnerMatt or at Alexandra_Owen on Twitter.
And we are really grateful for those who have taken the time to either rate or review our show in your podcast provider's app. So if you haven't done so already, please do take the time to review our show, or even better, simply share the episode with friends and colleagues on your social media. Bye for now.